Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 12 of the anime series Shouwa Genroku Rakugo Shinjuu. And man, this did not play out in any way, shape, or form as I might have expected or thought. Largely, I have speculated things like, maybe there was some sort of gangland influence that Sugoroku or Miyokichi got involved in inadvertently, that came a calling and saw to their end, and all these different kinds of, criminalistic theories and being desperate for money and all this kind of stuff. And it was really just a strange sequence of events to have, Kikuhiko going and performing this Rakugo at this, sort of hot spring hotel sort of environment. And be sort of the lead-in to Sugoroku's being the top billing, and his own performance very much being personally affected by his life, by the lost love in Miyokichi that he has felt so resoundingly, and the parallels in that performance, in that story, of a man trying to clean up his act and make amends for all of the money he wasted and all these things, and steer clear from the drink ever again and all that stuff, becoming a respectable, sort of leader, worker guy. And this is all Miyokichi seemingly wanted of Sugoroku. And just the cutting at the heartstrings of, in Sugoroku's admitting, when finally, both Kiko and Sugoroku have confronted Miyokichi, who's been waiting in the wings the whole time for Kikuhiko to make himself known and to have her confrontation with him, licking the teardrops away, getting carried away by the scent of the woman all over again. Kikuhiko is in that moment, not fully. I do believe he was still, retracted from her to a point. But when Sugoroku interrupts and he says he'll give Rakugo up, he'll leave it behind, he'll straighten up his act, he'll get a job because of how much Miyokichi means to him and how much Konatsu means to him. And I mean, there are adorable shots of Konatsu after the performance. She and the audience are shedding tears, they're sharing laughs, and she's so exhausted after this performance. She's just laying atop her father, and it's such a sweet, beautiful, bittersweet moment to see her unconscious on his chest, and the bitter words that come later during that confrontation as they affect Kikuhiko. I mean, he can only but look up at the sky like he can't believe what he's hearing. He thought he had gone and done it. He thought he had brought Sugoroku around. And there was always still a hint of doubt on my own part watching, when he puts the Yakumo Master's sort of kimono over him and everything. And you see Sugoroku was not pleased to make that revelation. And Kikuhiko thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's doing what needs to reach Sugoroku to make him appreciate what he once was and what he can be again. And so it's like that fever pitch divide between the three of them all over again in the same room. And Miyokichi's talking about escaping this life, how romantic it would be to escape this life with Kikuhiko off the balcony. And it's like I breathed a sigh of relief when Sugoroku barged in the door, and my mouth hung agape through the entirety of that sequence, to the point of Miyokichi being in shock and denial at what Sugoroku was promising her, falling back, falling over the edge, Sugoroku making a mad dash to grab her at the last minute, and then Kikuhiko grabbing on to his tunic for them to be dangling there. And as soon as that happened, the whole time I'm like, no. This isn't really how they go out. This isn't how they're taken out of the picture for real. Is it? And it was strange because it was so surreal and it seemed so fictional. like everything else in this series has felt, it's been put forth with a level of realism. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing was like the same level of realism. And yet, that's one of the most beautiful and entrancing aspects of this series, is its compelling sort of listing into the literary art. I mean, you don't necessarily think of the printed word when you think of Rakugo, but it very much exists based on language and the usage of it and the performance of it. You know, there is something almost evocative of words on a page and how your imagination runs wild with the performer. You know, you're just seeing the lone performer, but in your mind's eye, you can view this entire imaginary world where this story is taking shape and unfolding. And I found myself, for my part, being a Sherlockian, someone who has read the entirety of the Conan Doyle Sherlock canon a couple times over. I was highly reminded of The Final Problem, which was the story in which Conan Doyle intended to kill off Sherlock Holmes in a match to the death with his arch nemesis, Dr. James Moriarty, on Reichenbach Falls. And there was something about the mental images, both these sequences, the idea of Sherlock and Moriarty clasped arm in arm, hanging over and falling over the waterfall edge, and it being matched somehow, only it was almost as though it was Kikuhiko's Sherlock trying to hold on for dear life to his friend Watson, friend and brother Watson, and his wife. And unfortunately, they meet their end. And this is how it happened. And it's bittersweet, and there are some elements of it that are emotional, but like, much more was I just surprised and kind of shocked that this would be the way both Tsukuroku and Miyokichi would be taken out of the entire sort of story, the portrait. And the best I can sort of tell from the PV for the next and final episode of this season, I would love to see this continue on in another season, because there's so much of the sort of modern era I'd like to fall back on and come to understand and learn more about, is that we are going to get some of that. Like, I don't know if that last shot at the end of the episode, I believe that was part of the PV, because they had the end credits like middle of the episode, so as not to eschew the importance of everything else that followed. But one of the things I noted was, of course, we see young Konatsu again, and then it seems like we warp back to present day with, you know, Kikuhiko's being the modern Yakumo and all that good stuff. And I am highly curious to see where exactly they leave off from this point. This entire series, I put out speculations like by the third episode in the earliest going of the series that maybe they were going to be solely focusing on the past between Kikuhiko and Tsukuroku respectively. That proved to be true, and it was a hell of a compelling and moving and engaging, you know, full of characterization and pathos kind of tale. And it was beautiful, and it was bittersweet, and I'm just really going to be highly curious to see how they wrap it up with a pretty bow, hopefully, in the final episode of, again, what I hope will be just season 1. I hope we get a season 2. I don't know how popular this is in Japan. Hopefully it is. Hopefully it's justifiable. We could get another one. If not, I hope they give us a sense of closure enough that, you know, it leaves off satisfyingly. And so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of this particular episode of Shouwa Genroku Rakugo Shinjuu. And if you found it to be much more emotional than I did, whereas I felt it was more shocking and surprising. If you could have ever imagined that this would be how Tsukuroku and Miyokichi would pass on from the tale. And what you might speculate You know, are we seeing in that PV precursor of the young Konatsu, the way she's looking at Kikuhiko, is she not pleased that she's stuck with him? Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, anything goes in the comments below. Love it or hate it. Let me know what you thought of this episode. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.